I'm down for an early morning lark and I've just seen evidence of a pipe stem, which of course I'm hoping has something on the end of it. So it's only a tiny little piece that caught my eye, quite by chance actually, very lucky. Can you see it? It's just here, just between those rocks there. And it's actually got the little mouthpiece there at the end, the sort of nipply bit, but of course at this stage I have no idea if there's anything on the end. It could just be a stem. That's looking hopeful. Let's get that stone out of the way. Very delicate operation here. Let's move that stone as well. And then, oh yes, yes, yeah, look, you can just see there how it's nestled in there all cosily. And I think we're going to be lucky. I think we're going to be lucky. So let's just loosen it a little bit more. There we are. And I'm going to pull it out. And there we are, look, releasing it from its mud bed. And look, you can see a beautiful pipe imprint there, where it's been for the last 200 years or so. Isn't that great? And here we have a whole pipe. I don't know if it's got a maker on it. Let's go and give it a rinse. Let's give it a rinse off. Look at that, isn't it lovely? It's an interesting shape. And no heel on this one. Well, it just goes to show that the early bird catches the pipe. Now, as well as a lot of pipes, I also seem to find a lot of buttons, and today is no different. Because I've just seen, I don't know if you can see it, a button here. And it's a military button, definitely. It's got a bugle on it. Oh, that's a really nice one, actually. Oh, that's wonderful. I can't remember what it is, but I've found something similar before. I just found what I think might be some shot or whatever they call it, like a tiny sort of cannonball type thing. Very tiny, very mini. It was covered in rust, so I gave it a little tap and the rust fell away and has left me with this. So ammunition experts out there, perhaps you can let me know if that is indeed some ammunition. I can see something round just here poking out of this rock. Obviously I'm hoping it's like a watch or or something that's engraved with somebody's name. Wouldn't that be amazing? Let me investigate further and come back to you and tell you what it is. Okay, well I got it out and obviously it's a little grimy, so I don't know what it is yet. I'm going to have to give it a wash. Maybe it's some kind of little pot. I suspect that's what it is. Containing a large gold doubloon, hopefully. Okay, let's give this round gold doubloon carrier a little wash to see if it's got the name of a pirate engraved on it or not, as the case may be. I think it looks like it could be a makeup compact thing. See, it's got hinges. Oh, and it does have a mark on the top. So, yeah, I think it's probably an old blusher container. And you know what, I found a few of those here, so I'm going to have to do a makeup special. I know my gold doubloon is out there somewhere. Just not today. I'm pretty excited because I always love finding local history, and I saw this piece of white pottery. It was slightly embedded in the mud, so I gave it a little wiggle, and it's got something on it which I'm going to show you. I haven't read it properly myself yet. Very, very, very exciting. To me it's way more exciting than, you know, gold and stuff, because it's got some history to research, and it's a mug with the property of the Royal Ordnance Factory, Woolwich, 1937. That is such a beautiful find. And I'll be looking up that later. And it's whole! I could even take it home and wash it and have a cup of tea in it. And I wonder who the last person was that had a cup of tea in that. Look at that. The property of the Royal Ordnance Factory, Woolwich, 1937. Well, just finding that today has made it worth coming down to the river. I just saw this sticking out of the mud, and I thought it might be a pipe for a moment, but I pulled it out and had a look, and, well, it's a pen, so... But what's interesting is what it's written. What's written on it. It says, government property. I'll just wipe it on my jeans so you can read it. There we are. Government property. I've never seen a pen with government property on it before. You can barely see it, but oh, I've just seen another one as well. There is the tiniest bit of a pipe bowl just there, but I've also just noticed here there's also evidence of a pipe bowl. So this is kind of exciting. We're going to have a double extraction. So how about that? A double pipe extraction. So let's start with this one. Now I'm just going to take away some of the mud. Oop, quite hard trying to do it with one hand. From around the side of the bowl. Okay. So look, you can see a bit more of it there, and it's pretty. Oh, a bit of movement. Oh, and I think it's just a bowl. Oh, but it's an interesting bowl. What's on there? Oh, it's one of my favourites. It's got a fouled anchor on one side there, and on the other side there's a little ship. Again, we'll be able to see it better when the pipe fades back to its kind of ivory colour. Sort of pick it up there. It's like a galleon in full sail. And an anchor on that side. A maritime pipe. So let's have a look at the other one now. So here's for the second pipe extraction, and we're looking at this one just here. So again, I'm going to remove some of the mud from around the bowl. And see what we've got. Oh, what's that? Oh, okay, I have been tricked. It's a shell, it's not a bowl of a pipe. It's a shell. It's a shell pretending to be a pipe. Well, that had me fooled. So it wasn't a double extraction after all. Now, I've been having a look in this area here where there's lots of little bits of metal, and there's even quite a few modern coins, like these ones here. But I just saw something here which initially I thought was a 2p, but which I now see is definitely not. So I'm going to get that home to have a look. My battery's almost running out, so I'm not going to linger on it too much. Looks like a foreign coin, I think, or a coin that I haven't seen anyway. And there's something round here, something perhaps like a token. So 2 interesting bits to research when I get back. Hi everyone, great to see you. I hope you and your families are all keeping well during this difficult time that we're all going through. Thank you very much for accompanying me along the Thames foreshore for that little mudlarking expedition. It was actually made up of quite a few expeditions over the last 2 or 3 years. I've been delving into the files on my computer looking for objects that I haven't yet shared with you, and I'm here with them now in my studio, and we're going to have a closer look. Now, I didn't actually plan it this way, but it's VE Day today, and some of the objects, as you will have noticed, have got a link to the war. In particular, this beautiful mug from the Woolwich Ordnance factories, the ammunition and military button. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about those now, or at least you might be able to help me with some of them actually, because I'm not terribly sure on some of them. And then we're going to come back and finish off with this mug. because somebody who watches my videos has come back to me and told me some lovely stories that he remembers associated with the Woolwich Ordnance factories, and so I'm going to tell you a few of those. But first of all, let's go and have a look at the other items. And here we are with this beautiful selection of objects which the Thames kindly threw out for me to find. And so we are now going to have a closer look at them. Let's start with the old favourites, or at least my favourites, the clay pipes. The oldest one first. This bowl here, which is really rather lovely. It's got the fouled anchor on that side and the ship in full sail on that side. Now I do find quite a few of these. I've got two of my other finds here which are pretty much identical. And they date to about the mid-19th century and were probably smoked by somebody on a naval ship or on a big sailing ship and then thrown into the River Thames for me to find almost 200 years later. And then there's this one, which, looking at the size and the shape of it, is going to be a lot more modern and probably dates to, I don't know, the late 19th to early 20th century. It could be 1920 even. I mean, this is almost like a briar pipe, and it's got that bowl there with no spur on it, no heel, like those ones. And it does have a maker's mark on it. It's got Garibaldi on it, or whether that's a maker I don't know, or whether it's commemorating something. I'm not quite sure of the significance of the actual Garibaldi part. If anybody knows, please let me know. But I love that sort of chubby bowl and the short stem, which also is another indication of it being a little bit more modern. I've gathered up a few of my other pipes which sort of have a similar shape, although none of them have got that lovely big sort of fat bowl. But none of them have got heels either, and they're likely to all be roughly the same sort of era, late 19th, early 20th century. So what have we got here? Oh, we've got this, which obviously I hoped was going to hold some old treasure. The fact is, I don't know if it does because I can't actually open it, but it's far more likely to hold some very, very old compact, because it is a coty makeup compact. Would have been in a lady's handbag, probably in the 1930s, and I found some nice old coty adverts. How it ended up in the river is anybody's guess. Then we've got this button here, which is from the Highland Light Infantry and would have come from a tunic. And I think this one is World War II. Let's get it the right way up. And I'm saying that, is that the right way up? No, it's there. I'm saying that because of the crown at the top. But if I'm wrong, then please feel free to correct me. I've found a few of the Highland Light Infantry buttons over the years. There's another one here. It's in a really very, very delicate state. And also a cap badge here from the Highland Light Infantry. And I think that that could be World War I. Sticking on the military sort of ammunition theme, I've got these here. I'm wondering if they could be grape shot, sort of very early grape shot, although to be honest with you I'm not too sure how to date grape shot, so feel free to help me. I'd be very happy for any information. They're like mini cannonballs, aren't they? And this is a good opportunity to say a rather belated thank you to Dustin, who sent me this really beautiful book all about the history of ammunition. And that's really handy because I do find a fair amount of ammunition. And looking at these pictures here, which is apparently early grape shot, I'm wondering if this could be grape shot. but I'm sure amongst all you ammunition experts out there, somebody or many of you are going to be able to give me the answer. What next? Now let's have a look at this pen. This pen, which is obviously quite modern, but it made me chuckle because it's marked on there government property or property of the government. And as I did find this the same day as I found this mug marked clearly the property of the Royal Ordnance Factories, it made me chuckle because it just seemed like everybody was being extremely possessive that day. And what have we got here? Ah yes, now this is a 1/4 anna from India. And it's dated 1936. On the other side there is King George V. And King George V was the King of the United Kingdom, the British Dominions and Emperor of India from 6th of May 1910 until his death in 1936. And it's a really pretty coin. And then, 1 year later, 1937, we come to this mug, and just looking at it makes me want a cup of tea. Well, that's better. I've got a nice cup of tea now, and you knew it, didn't you? You knew I was going to put it in this mug. How could I not? The thought that the last person who had a cup of tea in this mug was somebody who worked in the Woolwich Ordnance Factories, maybe back in 1937. And I'm sure on their tea break they were enjoying a delightful cup of tea, or maybe not so delightful, maybe that's why it ended up in the mud. But this cup of tea is absolutely perfect. Delicious, and I definitely won't be throwing it in the mud. So just think, who had a cup of tea in that before me? Now it could have been Tony Mantell's grandfather. Listen to this. It's always really nice when something you find in the Thames has a personal link to someone, and it's been quite a long time that I wanted to show you this mug, but each time I looked at it I felt as if it was such a huge topic to try and research the Woolwich Ordnance Factories. The Royal Ordnance Factories is the collective sort of name for all the different ordnance factories that manufactured munitions for Britain. And Woolwich was one of the largest and most significant, and it has a history in manufacturing munitions that goes back to the late 17th century. And I just didn't know where to start. So when I heard from Tony Mantell and he told me some stories about growing up in Woolwich and his memories, it just seemed the perfect time to share some of those with you. I asked him if he knew anything about the Royal Ordnance Factories, and he told me some nice stories of when his grandfather worked there. And I'm going to share some of those with you. He also said, which I didn't know, that the rockets that are mentioned in the US national anthem were made at the Woolwich Arsenal. So did you know that? Now, his father worked at the wood shop at the Arsenal, and he met an ordnance engineer there, and this man became a lifelong friend and was considered Tony's grandfather. And he worked there between World War I and World War II, which would fit exactly the time of this mug. So Tony's grandfather could have enjoyed a cup of tea in that mug at some point in the canteen. Now he says, my grandfather was involved in the instruments that might allow a gun in a moving ship in a rolling sea to hit their target at that range. This was extremely complicated. Complications such as the rotation of the earth and the temperature of the gun barrel and many more would have had to be taken into account and calculated quickly without electric calculators in order to have a hope of hitting the target. And my grandfather at various times worked with John Challens, who also worked at the Woolwich Arsenal. John Challens was involved in the production of Britain's hydrogen bomb, some components of which were made at the Arsenal. He says, "My father worked in the wood shop, which traditionally made gun carriages, but by that time wooden carriages were becoming obsolete. After World War II there was no work available for my father at the arsenal, which is when he joined the Port of London Authority Police. Incidentally, my grandmother's second husband also worked at the arsenal between 1930 and 1945. He also could have had a cup of tea in this mug. I do not know what capacity he worked, but he was a renowned sportsman playing for the Arsenal's football team and cricket teams. Unfortunately, he was badly injured during an air raid on the Arsenal and suffered intestinal problems for the rest of his life. I know that in 1940, the Royal Ordnance factories at Woolwich were greatly damaged during bomb attacks, so it could have been then perhaps. And after he was injured, he suffered intestinal problems for the rest of his life. Now, I do like this bit that Tony has told me about. He says, "In the neighbourhood where I grew up, in Woolwich, it seemed most women of a certain age had worked at the arsenal during the war. They never said just what they did, other than they worked at the arsenal. Our next door neighbour, Mrs. Tillett, used to solder, and she was very good at it. She taught me to solder and eventually gave me her soldering iron when she thought I was proficient. I still have that iron and I still use it." So, some great memories there and stories associated with the Royal Ordnance factories of Woolwich. And that's what makes these objects found in the mud come alive, when we can hear some real personal stories attached to them. So thanks, Tony. Here's to your grandfather and your grandmother. Now, the Thames often throws out remnants of the war: cap badges, buttons, bullets. This morning I did put a picture out on Twitter with a few of the artefacts associated with the war that I found, with it being VE Day. And probably one of the most momentous remnants associated with the war that I found was an unexploded hand grenade. Back in 2015, I think it was, I found one near Greenwich, and I called the police. They came along, and then they called the Ordnance squad, and they came and detonated this hand grenade, which was probably issued to the Home Guard during World War II. So I'm going to leave you now with that explosion, and before I do that, I'd like to wish you all a very good week ahead. Thank you again for watching and all your comments and feedback. I greatly appreciate it. If you've written to me and I haven't got back to you yet, I will do so. It just takes me a bit of time sometimes. So thanks again, and see you again soon.
This is, we can confirm the river is fully closed now. Over.
Yeah, just take 924 to receive that.
Yeah, that was received. Stand by! Fire! Told you.
Bloody hell.
You're okay. You're all right.
Did you not expect it to be that?
No! I just thought, not at all.